I wanted to make this short little clip because I know I've been covering it in class, but I just wanted to reiterate and go over this just directly in a short video. So, you're not going through a really long demo and, not catching this at the end. So 2 different stages that your clay can get in. One, it could start to dry out on you too much, and then it makes it really hard to smooth. Especially, you'll notice that the very bottom here is what's gonna get pretty hard pretty quickly, mostly because we put paper towels around the top. Now this piece, I did not cover overnight. I forgot, I started doing something else, and then I left class, and so that was the whole story of what happened. So when I started in this morning, what I did is I went ahead in and I put some damp paper towels on it. Now that refreshed it a little bit, but not completely. And when I try to refresh a project that's a little too dry, I like to put the paper towels on it, go all the way to the bottom, and really make sure you're wrapping these around the edges. Now, these aren't like soaking wet paper towels. They're just enough to start reviving it a little bit. I usually let it sit for about 20 minutes or so, let it start to absorb the moisture. You'll notice that your paper towels are gonna dry out because the clay is thirsty, it's dry. It's gonna wanna absorb all the moisture from the paper. So go ahead and take your towels off. You're gonna wanna get another damp towel. That's what I'm doing over here. And you're gonna wanna wrap it up, again, the same way, making sure, you really are applying to the bottom here as well, so that the whole thing is encased. So this would be issue number 1. Common, very common. Ceramics is super temperamental, and that's okay, we could usually fix it. And then what I would do is I would take my plastic. I don't know where I put my plastic. Oh, right here. Like I said, any type of grocery bag works. I had these in class. I would actually maybe prefer to use a grocery bag, but I have to bring one in. These were just kind of lying around. And make sure that you cover it all the way to the bottom. If it's a little bit kind of sticky, you could even kind of stick it to the bottom. But make sure this is all the way covered. You could even tape it down a little bit if your bag isn't attaching all the way to the bottom base of the pot. But if you are using the type of plastic that commonly shopping bags are made out of, that usually suctions on fairly well. Leave it, let it absorb water, and then check on it in a day. If it's still not back to where you want it to be, then you're gonna wanna redo the process. If it looks pretty good, just kind of leave it as is, keep the same damp paper towels on it, and you should be good to then start going in and building up with a little slip and smoothing that back out. I'm gonna move this over. The second thing that could happen, and this one could be a doozy sometimes. You could have a piece, whether it be really dry and you're trying to revive it, or whether it's something that, was just in a regular state and you put too many wet paper towels on it. So these are, almost dripping. If I were to just kind of keep covering it with these and get see how these are really super, I could squeeze it and water comes out. You want to kind of squeeze it out before you go ahead and apply it, and then cover up your project. Now, I let this sit before just for demonstration purposes to give you guys an example of what would happen if you were to soak this with a ton of wet paper towel. Number one, if it's already in like, greenware, malleable state, you don't really want to add a bunch of wet paper towels, just slightly damp and cover it up. If you're trying to re-wet it, do it the same way I showed you, so that it's a gradual thing, because if not, I know that you guys all know what happens when you mix clay and water together. It creates slip. Now, even though slip acts like glue, it's almost like a melted substance. What could happen then, and because these were really damp, is I started to develop slip in here. Like, this is all slip coming out. The whole entire thing. Now, I could probably still work with this. If it was more slippy, it would just not be good. You could also see some of this is starting to crack. If there's too much water, it could also start turning the actual pot itself into slip. And when that happens, it's gonna become really weak and it's gonna flop on you. So just make sure, a reminder on how to maintain your project with paper towels. If you guys ever have any questions on this, feel free to, you could email it to me. Feel free to send me a message on Remind. You could send me like a picture of the state of your pot, and I could kind of give you some suggestions on the steps you could go ahead and take, not only for this project, but any project in the future. I hope this was a little helpful. You know what, but if you have any questions, ask. I did have a sculpture when I was younger, and the whole thing collapsed because I had too many wet paper towels on it. I wanted it to last over like a long weekend. I believe it was Thanksgiving weekend, and I was very new to the medium, and it was a giant sculpture. So I guess I wasn't so new, as in I wasn't used to giant sculptures, so I figured this is gonna need a lot more wet paper towels. Well, that sculpture started, breaking apart in areas because it became really, really weak, and it just kind of started falling apart. It's kind of hard to repair once it gets like that. We are working with small forms right now, but just kind of be mindful of that. Don't let your project turn to slip. And also, when it dries out, we want to gradually introduce some water to revive it. All right, you guys have a good day.